19th of November 1980, it was a very big day for Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Not only was she now 80 years of age, but still looking wonderful and as sprightly and as much loved as ever throughout the world. But of course they decided to celebrate this particular, milestone year by putting on a rather spectacular royal variety performance. And this was all truly a nod to the greats that she'd enjoyed throughout her time with the British monarchy and of course as part of her reign. Now we all know she liked certain acts from a certain era and particular comedians, everything from George Formby to Frankie Howerd. But they decided to do something even more special. Now, a good friend of mine, sadly we no longer have him with us, but is was the brilliant dancer and presenter, entrepreneur, actor, whatever, Lionel Blair, was tasked with putting this very special royal show together. And as he told me, it was one of the most nerve-wracking things that he'd ever had to do, simply because of the huge breadth and scale, and the fact that this time around it was going to feature some incredible artists, including a good friend of his, a person that I was lucky enough also to meet, the brilliant and late Sammy Davis Jr. That's right. And alongside, of course, another beautiful icon of that particular era and our times. I thought she was a brilliant singer, I have to say, the late Peggy Lee, who remembers, of course, her wonderful rendition of Fever. Still sends chills down your spine today, right? Well, according to Lionel, he said from the very off it proved to be a rather difficult task because, he thought it was just wonderful to be asked to do this. He said, behind the scenes, as he already knew, putting together all of those tricky manoeuvres, all those wonderful acts, simply to entertain the royals, was no, easy task. But behind the scenes, another Hollywood star had decided to do something which literally could have caused an absolute havoc on that very special night. The difficulty was, as he pointed out, not only was he a special star and much loved by the British monarchy, so much so that way back in the 1940s, when he'd made his appearance at the London Palladium, very specially, of course, the young princesses, Princess Margaret and Princess Elizabeth, along with the King and Queen Elizabeth at the time, had gone along to see him, not once, but quite a few times. In fact, he broke Palladium box office records with his zany act. And if you remember, you may have seen pictures of this, the wonderful actor stroke comedian Danny Kaye famously sat on the edge of the London Palladium stage alongside literally the same act that he took to Manchester and to Blackpool at the Empress Ballroom, and took a break by having a British cup of tea brought for him to sip while he just chatted away to the audience. This was sort of like breaking the fourth wall, never really been done before. And of course, as Lionel Blair told me, he never failed to mention the fact of how successful and how he'd become such a favourite with the monarchy, which proved to be rather difficult for him when you consider the other greats, as I say, the aforementioned Sammy Davis Jr., Peggy Lee, and that year also another man that was in the news. You know him from I Dream of Jeannie, but of course the world knows him as J.R. Ewing, Larry Hagman. Now Larry famously on that night was there to sing a little ditty celebrating the Queen Mother, but very tragically for him, he told me this later, forgot the lyrics, the words and literally everything. And it was his mother, the Broadway star Mary Martin, who came on and saved him. Don't all mums, right? Now, where it gets really interesting is this, you see, because on that special show, it all gone very well. Peggy Lee had sang beautifully. Sammy Davis Jr. had already skittered with his chum Lionel, and things were going incredibly well. Now, according to the source, the producer, Louis Benjamin, amongst things, he'd been asked to provide something rather special for the royal box. And Lionel said, what's that? What is it exactly? And then it emerged that actually apparently the request was for a microphone to be placed inside the royal box, which was unheard of before. And obviously the danger about that was that they could hear the conversations about maybe what they're saying about their acts. It could be switched on at any time. The request, in fact, hadn't come from the royal party, but in fact from the Hollywood star Danny Kaye. And he basically said to Lionel, and Lionel told me this himself, what I want to do, you see, I want to sing happy birthday to the Queen Mother. She loves me. It'll be fine. And then she can pick up the microphone in the royal box and sing back to him. So there was a bit of a stunned silence, and Lionel said, "What?" And he said, "No, don't worry, you know." Now, he couldn't risk losing Danny Kaye off the bill because he realised that if he said something, Danny might take his case and wander off. You know, the sort of thing. Difficult divas in show business. So he said, "Well, look, leave it with me." And what happened was Danny Kaye did wish the Queen a happy birthday, the Queen Mother, should I say. But there was no reciprocation back of her joining in with happy birthday with a microphone. And apparently Lionel took it on the chin as saying, well, he sent it up there or he sent somebody. He didn't know what happened. Danny apparently was furious behind the scenes, but couldn't say anything on the traditional lineup after the show. As Lionel Blair told me, that was one of the, well, difficulties of having to put together such a big show with so many big stars. But as he also pointed out, can you imagine, Neil, if we'd have actually left a microphone in the box and some of the acts may have heard what the royal party thought of the individual acts? I said, what was it like in the end? He said, you know, Sammy Davis Jr. truly stole the show alongside Peggy Lee. He said, but the show will always be remembered as the show that Larry Hagman forgot his words as the biggest star on television that year, in, of course, the forthcoming episode of Who Shot JR. And according to Lionel, the Queen Mother said to Larry Hagman, so go on, tell me, do you live or die? But apparently even he wouldn't spill the beans for royalty. Neil Sean in the very heart of